All right. The narrative is breaking down. We're going to watch this little exchange. This is about Leonardo DiCaprio, but they get into how circumcision can be brought up as a relevant point, but quickly shut down because it is the ultimate taboo. America's dirty little secret. Watch how this man reacts when this host brings up circumcision.
Old can die in war, a 19-year-old can vote, a 19-year-old can take on massive amounts of debt, a 19-year-old can and to Ben Shapiro's point, which I actually don't think is wrong necessarily or crazy here, 19-year-olds and in the left view, ideally people much younger, could sign up for very invasive, barely reversible surgery.
Let's talk about that, because Ben Shapiro, I presume, as a Jewish man, circumcised his child as a baby long before he could even begin to think to consent or agree to anything. Is that genital mutilation okay?
I'm not going to talk about that subject.
Okay, well, that's the way that we talk about lopping off genitals and doing irreversible surgical procedures to genitals. There's a real double standard.
But I was not bringing up these.
All right, see how she rightly points out how it is a double standard, how lopping off genitals, there are vastly different conversations depending on the subject. And that is simply because of the perception that is culturally influenced. The United States is a genital cutting culture. So for her to bring up circumcision, that is basically wrong think in this country, which is why it was immediately shut down by him. They could not even show his reaction. Let's watch that one more time.
People much younger could sign up for very invasive, barely reversible surgery.
Let's talk about that, because Ben Shapiro, I presume, as a Jewish man, circumcised his child as a baby long before he could even begin to think to consent or agree to anything. Is that genital mutilation?
All right, this man is paralyzed in the mind right now. As soon as she said circumcision, he's probably circumcised himself. I'm only assuming that because this may take place in America with a genital cutting culture, circumcision majority. As soon as she said circumcision, his mind shut off, and he doesn't want to talk about that. He feels it is not his place to talk about circumcision because he feels it as a Jewish ceremony is not something he can have an opinion on. But he, as a man, is affected by genital mutilation. It is certainly something he should be able to talk about. But he feels too ashamed and too embarrassed to speak about circumcision. This is how the narrative on circumcision continues to be controlled.
Mutilation okay?
I'm not going to talk about that subject.
Okay, well, that's the way that we talk about lopping off genitals and doing irreversible surgical procedures to genitals. There's a real double standard there.
All right, so as you can see, she's a little annoyed at the fact that genital mutilation. He says, no, I'm not going to talk about that. She says, yeah, well, that's because it is genital mutilation. This is where the conversation is at. It basically cannot happen.